Thank you very, very much, Arun. It's a pleasure being here this evening with all of you. And I appreciate this opportunity to be part of this important conclave. In just 4 short years, I think it's fair to say that this has become an important political, cultural, social, and economic event as people gather, not just from India, but from places around the world to talk about the future that awaits and to examine how India is perceived from within and without. My husband was the speaker in 2003, and unfortunately he was unable to attend in person, and he deeply regretted that. But he always enjoys any opportunity, even by long distance, to be connected with India. And I'm grateful that I can represent the Clinton family here tonight. We all have such vivid memories. Arun mentioned my trip with my daughter in 1995. And it is true that, as I write in my memoir, Living History, I had developed an interest in and admiration from afar for India. But I never had the chance to visit until I came as First Lady. That was not exactly how I had imagined coming to India for the first time, but it was, even despite that, a very special personal privilege for me. I also believe that on a public level, it did help to pave the way for my husband's visit as president in 2000, when he returned with my daughter and my mother. I was campaigning for the Senate, and Bill and Chelsea and my mother had such a wonderful time, thanks to so many of you in this audience who were typically such gracious hosts and hostesses. I confess to being somewhat envious, however, that I was not there for all of the events. And I know that the memories of that trip have stayed very vivid in all of our minds. It gives me great pleasure, therefore, to return to India today and to be secure in the knowledge that U.S.-Indian relationships and friendship has grown only stronger since we were here in the 1990s and 2000. Many of you have played a role in helping to build and further that strong relationship. And I'm very pleased that President Bush and his administration have continued to deepen and even go further in that relationship. I have watched the relationship blossom as a senator from New York. I'm privileged to represent hundreds of thousands of Indian Americans, and I am co-chair, along with Republican Senator John Cornyn from Texas, of the Senate India Caucus. We have a membership now of 30 senators, and we are very pleased to have formalized the relationship with not only India, but the Indian diaspora, which is such a strong and thoughtful constituency in our country. So being here and being given the honor of addressing this conclave is a very special opportunity for me. And I wanted just to reflect on a few of the issues that I believe are important to both of our nations and to the future that we together hope to create for our children and future generations. As we have grown closer, we have learned that our relationship must be rooted in mutual respect, mutual needs, mutual goals, and mutual responsibilities. We face similar economic challenges from a changing global economy. We face the challenge of terrorism and the threats posed by the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. I believe very strongly that India and the United States must work together to address these and other problems. And like friends, where we have areas of disagreement, we have to be honest and frank with one another. I don't have a friend in the world that I agree with on everything. And the friendship between our two countries is maturing at a pace where I believe that the walls are coming down, the perceptions are rounding out, and that we not only see things very similarly, maybe to each of our surprise, but where we don't necessarily, we continue to work together to try to shape a common perspective. It is quite something to come to India today and see the progress that has occurred in a relatively short period of time. The democratic traditions are so well rooted in the soil here. I've just come from Iraq and Afghanistan, two of the world's fledgling democracies, two countries that have just held their first free and fair elections. I know you had the pleasure of having President Karzai here yesterday, and I had met with him in Kabul. And I know that he inspired many of you as he inspires me. I want to thank India for the support that you have given to Afghanistan, generously providing now more than $500 million for hospitals, schools, and infrastructure. Progress is being made, and India's support is essential. But visiting Afghanistan and Iraq is a reminder of what a powerful idea democracy is. When you live in a country like both of ours, with a stable democratic tradition, democracy can come to mean just the day-to-day push and pull of political intrigue. Who's up, who's down, who's in, who's out. It can mean campaigning. It can mean, of course, the hard work of governing. But when you do visit places where people have literally risked their lives to cast their first vote, it's good to be reminded that self-government is not only noble and just, but it is still a revolutionary idea that must be nurtured by the international community of democracies. At a time when the benefits of democracy are being debated and the benefits of globalization of our economy are being debated, it is important that India and the United States stand for both free nations and free markets. Because throughout the world, there are many people who feel left out and who not only express their frustration at the voting booth. We are similarly situated in the sense that we continually have to find ways to embrace and encourage the benefits of democracy and globalization while ensuring that our political and economic systems do not exacerbate underlying inequities or create new ones. As turbulent as the weeks were last spring, leading to the formation of a new government here in India, they highlighted for all to see the way democracy makes possible the peaceful and seamless transition from one administration to the next, even in the face of public debate and disagreement. How one deals with these surprising transitions, like the one that the United States faced in 2000, bears witness to the strength of our common democratic values. We are governments of, by, and for our people. It is not always easy, but it is always the right touchstone that keeps faith with our past, our present, and our future. As I look now at the challenges confronting my own country as well as yours, I think the remarkable transformation economically that is happening here is one of the most extraordinary stories of modern history. The development of India's economy over the past 50 years has been dramatic and unprecedented. You know the statistics. Poverty has fallen, needs to fall further, but the progress is unmistakable. The decrease in poverty that you have brought about is a great tribute to your democratic values and your opening of the economy slowly but steadily over the past years. The brave reforms that were undertaken in the 1990s and embraced across the political spectrum have been so prodigious as to establish India as one of the major forces in international markets. Indeed, a recently released report by the United States National Intelligence Council called Mapping the Global Future states, and I quote, "India could emerge as the world's fastest-growing economy as we head toward 2020. How can one argue with that? And yet that's only part of the story, because just as in my own country, there is still much to do to ensure that economic opportunity, wealth, and ownership come to as many of India's people as possible. Poverty, the ranking of 156 in the world in per capita GDP, illustrates the gap that exists between the so-called haves and the have-nots. This is an issue for me in my country as well. But when we look at the progress that is possible, we have to believe that with the entrepreneurial energy unleashed among people, with positive governmental policies, with private sector commitment and investment, that gap can be narrowed dramatically. And as India strives to meet that challenge, you can be sure that the rest of the world is watching. Roughly 3 billion people around our world, about half of the Earth's population, feel that globalization has left them behind. We know that a dangerous few turn to violent means. They attack the modern world, thinking that if they could turn the clock back, somehow their identity, their meaning, their purpose in life would be renewed. But most people do not take that road. They are looking for the opportunities that have been promised, that a self-confident nation like yours and mine hold out to the rest of the world. It is not far-fetched to imagine that if India stays on the road that you have paved, that in a few decades from now, the India miracle will be the one that is the choice of those who still feel oppressed and deserted by their own governments or by the larger world community. Now, one component and consequence of the rise of India's economy has been vastly increased trade between the United States and India. There are over 1,000 American companies doing business in India today, and the trade numbers between our two nations are impressive. In 2003, the U.S. exported $5 billion in merchandise trade to India and imported $13.8 billion from India. And while these numbers are strong on both sides, it's obvious there is a significant trade gap. And that gap, as well as concerns about outsourcing of American jobs to India, have led some in my country to become concerned with the nature of our economic relationship. I think it's very important to note here that this concern does not arise out of some reflexive anti-Indian sentiment. In fact, that is not the case at all. The United States views the progress of India as a positive, and most Americans understand that an economically vibrant, democratic India is good for the United States. And so Americans on so many fronts believe that increasing wealth, increasing opportunity, giving people a chance to live up to their God-given potential is in everyone's interests, and are admiring of the progress that India has made. But as democracies responsible for and responsive to the needs of all of our citizens, I think we have to take seriously those who do feel and are in fact left behind. Our common task is to ensure that our respective domestic policies work to decrease inequities, and that our bilateral economic relationship is a two-way street, that does benefit both sides. It should not be seen as a zero-sum game where gains by one result in equal losses by the other. I think we can work together, in fact, I believe we must work together, to create an even larger pie for everyone, and by doing so, to demonstrate clearly to the naysayers that democracy is the best means for lifting the aspirations, livelihoods, quality of life, standard of living of those who otherwise would not have that opportunity. But I have to be very frank. People in my country are losing their livelihoods as jobs move to lower-cost sites. And U.S. policymakers need to address this challenge of global competition by dealing with our own fiscal deficit so we can invest in scientific research and development, new technologies for smart alternative energy, environmental cleanup, math and science education, 21st century infrastructure. We also need to increase Indian investment in the United States. Indeed, I've been personally involved in helping bring Indian companies to and creating jobs in our country. In June of 2002, I hosted about a dozen CEOs from the Indian technology industry in a visit to two upstate cities, Buffalo and Rochester. As a result of that visit, Tata Consultancy Services signed a memorandum of understanding with the University of Buffalo to explore ways to bring patented research to the marketplace. And subsequently, representatives from the University in Buffalo sent a delegation to India twice to follow up. And it is that kind of personal involvement and demonstration of the mutuality of our economic and commercial ties that I would like to see more of. Because that kind of approach will create sustainable, long-term growth for both countries, and it will help to prevent the kind of negative feelings that could be stirred up and flourish by those who are short-sighted and don't understand the imperatives of the global marketplace. We also need to ensure that our economic relationship is compatible with a commitment to protecting sensitive information that is communicated in the course of doing business in the global marketplace. I know that a bill I introduced last year was somewhat controversial here in India, but it was intended to protect the privacy of medical and financial information that is outsourced to countries that are very far from our borders and which create concern among American consumers and American medical patients. Because as our world becomes smaller and information is transmitted across the globe in a matter of seconds, I think it's imperative that we respect the privacy and sensitivity of that information. Because Americans who know that their X-ray is being read in Delhi or that their taxes are being prepared here want to be sure that they have the same protection for that information as they would under our laws back in the United States. There are many issues that we have to deal with because it's not only on the economic front that we have so many opportunities. I've also been very impressed by what India has done with respect to dealing with crises in the region. To take one example, in the wake of the tsunami last December, India declared its intention and demonstrated its ability to be a true global leader. And as the thoughts and prayers and contributions of Americans were created and engendered by the scenes we saw in our television, India stepped up to assure the safety and security not only of your own people, but of others as well. This has obviously been a major concern in my family. President Bush asked his father and my husband to raise awareness and funds in support of the relief effort, and the two former presidents have just this past week toured several countries that were affected. And UN Secretary General Anand has also asked Bill to be a special envoy to ensure that the recovery and reconstruction efforts so essential to Indonesia and Sri Lanka, Thailand, and other places are carried out successfully. But what India demonstrated was extraordinary. Within 24 hours, you deployed naval forces to assist Sri Lanka. And this was merely the vanguard of the substantial military and monetary support India has provided to countries in need in South and Southeast Asia. And your ability to care for yourself and the related decision to decline international relief assistance allowed the scarce and much-needed resources to reach those in countries that were desperate for the help. So I salute and thank India for its generosity and its ability to act very decisively at a time of natural crisis. Because in the world today, being a technologically advanced democratic nation with a strong economy may be important elements to being a leader in the world, but I don't believe they are enough. Being a leading nation requires the willingness and ability to shoulder responsibility for the well-being not only of yourself, but also for others who are less able to care for themselves. We can anticipate occasions when circumstances will truly require a joint response, and I look forward to strengthening our ties and bonds as we work to create those kinds of mechanisms. Every branch of our militaries now engage in joint exercises. Our governments have embarked on the U.S.-India Climate Change Partnership. The Next Step Strategic Partnership dialogue has commenced. Our law enforcement communities coordinate and cooperate in the fight against international terrorism, international crime, and the modern form of slavery, the trafficking of women and children. So India's growing role on the world stage is being noticed, and the deepening of cooperation between our two countries is essential. I also hope that another clear responsibility of a leader in the international order, namely to work for a secure and peaceful world, will also be advanced. As some of you may know, a few days ago, I was in Islamabad, where with a Senate delegation, I met with President Musharraf. And I believe that under President Musharraf, the complicated relationship between India and Pakistan has the potential for progress because he has demonstrated that he is a legitimate potential partner for a stable, productive, and mutually beneficial way forward. He is working to deal with the problems in his own country against great odds. It's an enormous task. But I hope that the progress we've seen that is being made in the composite dialogue will continue. I was especially impressed to hear the announcement of the establishment of the bus service in Kashmir. This development represents the ability of India and Pakistan to work together on simultaneous compromise without requiring one side or the other to yield first. It may be a model for going forward. And the conversations that are occurring between your commerce secretaries on trade, by the imminent arrival of Pakistan's cricket team for its much-anticipated tour, are all positive developments. And another area where I'm hoping India and the United States become effective leaders is with the problem of nuclear proliferation. The example of North Korea is a stark reminder of the dangers that arise when unstable or irresponsible regimes acquire the tools and technical expertise to build nuclear weapons. Now, obviously, the United States has had differences with India over the issue of nuclear weapons. But in the post-9/11 world, we have a shared interest in working together to prevent the transfer of nuclear materials and know-how to stateless terrorists and irresponsible states. There isn't any easy answer to this, but that shouldn't stop us from trying, and in a very forthright way, looking for constructive approaches to trying to prevent the development and spread of nuclear technology and weaponry. We need to think creatively about ways to reconcile India's and Pakistan's decision to be nuclear states with the United States' commitment to the Non-proliferation Treaty. I believe there are ways that are compatible with India's sovereignty, self-interest, and the deterrence doctrine. And I would hope that my own government would address the need for such an inclusive global system. There are also opportunities in each of our domestic arenas for us to work more closely together, in conservation and in the environment, on new technologies for creating smart alternative energy as well as environmental technology, on fighting disease. And there are such a range of diseases that are affecting both of our nations and that have the potential to just not only overwhelm but even bankrupt our healthcare systems. Not only the scourges like tuberculosis or malaria, HIV, AIDS, but the chronic conditions of obesity and diabetes and cardiovascular disease. In my own country, the increased costs to the healthcare system just from diabetes alone has the potential to make it unsustainable in years to come. We need the great minds of both India and the United States to be thinking not only of cures and treatments, but of prevention. How do we avoid these diseases in the first place? How do we have a public health system and education system that creates disincentives for the behaviors that lead to such not only horrible diseases, but financially draining commitments from our respective nations? One issue that we are working very closely together on that I think presents something of a model is the pandemic of HIV/AIDS. I raise that because I not only believe that it's important that India become a leader in dealing with it, but because of the role that my husband's foundation, the Clinton Foundation, is now playing along with the government. But if one thinks about the dimensions of the problem, it could take your breath away. The United Nations estimates that there are approximately 40 million people in the world living with HIV/AIDS. It is generally believed that 5.1 million of them live in India and around 900,000 in the United States. That means between our two countries, we have about 15% of the HIV/AIDS population. And we know that this disease does not respect or recognize political or geographic or any other boundaries. It moves across borders, it kills indiscriminately, and it is an increasing threat for many reasons, different in my country than in yours, but the numbers are threatening to increase if we do not take action soon. The Indian government has even estimated that without the intervention programs that it is planning, the number of Indians living with HIV/AIDS could grow to as many as 20 to 25 million by the year 2010, more than the current population of a number of your largest cities. Now, one part of our reaction to this is to send medicines and information to places that don't have it, and I've worked to do that in the Senate. But the other is to harness the intellectual power of our respective countries. And since September of 2004, my husband's foundation has worked very closely with the Indian government. And I have met today with the health minister and the National AIDS Control Organization and others to talk about the planning that is going on. I'm very impressed at the commitment by the government, and I anticipate great progress being made. But one of the key elements of that progress has been the Indian private sector. It is because of the Indian pharmaceutical companies that the Clinton Foundation has been able to provide low-cost, high-quality medicines for the poorest, neediest HIV/AIDS sufferers in several African and Caribbean nations. And Indian companies have made the broader distribution of antiretroviral drugs possible. They have proven that government private sector and NGO partnerships are the most effective way to combat this disease. I believe it's a model for other diseases and other problems as well. And I really appreciate what the Indian pharma sector has been able to accomplish. I raise this not only because of HIV/AIDS, but I believe there is a tremendous opportunity for the private sector in my country as well as yours to play a larger role in dealing with many of the challenges we confront. Building the infrastructure that India is looking to achieve in order to enhance your investment and extend the promise of economic opportunity into the rural areas of the country must be a partnership between the public and the private sectors. Looking for ways to conserve India's natural environment, including the beautiful tigers that my husband enjoyed seeing when he was here on his visit in 2000, must be a partnership between government, the private sector, and the not-for-profit sector. We are blessed in both of our countries with enormous capital reserves held in private hands that create wealth, that extend opportunity. But I believe in both of our nations there is more that our private sectors can and should do. And I hope that in the years to come we will do that together. There are ways of not only investing in new jobs, which is the primary obligation of a for-profit company, but also looking for ways to expand educational opportunities, scholarships, health care, and the like. I'm hoping that one of the attributes that each of us can contribute to the debate going on in the world about how we combat terrorism and the difficulties faced by those who feel so betrayed by modernity is to show that it's not just governments, but it's people. It's people through their private enterprise, through their charitable activities, who together are making a difference in the lives of so many. On all of these issues, India and America are allies. We are bound together, and I am so pleased that in the last decade, we have seen the fruits of that relationship. Our friendship and our partnership has to be even deeper for the sake of our own people and for those in the rest of the world. Americans are deeply aware of the gifts that India has given to the world. As Albert Einstein himself noted, we owe a lot to the Indians who taught us how to count, without which no worthwhile scientific discovery could have been made. But perhaps my favorite American acknowledgement of India's place in history is from our great American writer, Mark Twain. Now, for those of you who have read Twain, you know that he was noted for his sarcasm and his sense of irony. So I was quite struck when I read this quote that it seemed to be earnest and forthright. And then I read some more about it, and it was deeply felt. Here's what he said: India is the cradle of the human race, the birthplace of human speech, the mother of history, the grandmother of legend, and the great-grandmother of tradition. Perhaps I liked that so much because it was about mothers and grandmothers and great-grandmothers. So India remains all of those things, but it is no longer merely a repository of our common history as we view it from so far away. It is now an active and vital part of our future. And as India continues to grow stronger and to shoulder more of the responsibilities that come with being a global leader, I know that the United States, regardless of which administration is in the White House or which party is in power in the Congress, will stand with you as a steadfast friend and an equal partner. Thank you very much.
Let me take the prerogative of asking the first question as the moderator. I think that I should ask you the obvious question and get it off our collective chest. Senator, would you like to be the presidential nominee of your party in 2008?
Arun, I am very busily preparing for my reelection. I think as India knows as well as anyone, you cannot take any election for granted. So I am running for reelection to the Senate in New York.
I think you're ducking the question, Senator. If you do win the race, which I think should be a walkover, would you like to be president in 2000 or run for president?
I am not thinking any further ahead. I want to see how many former government ministers from BJP are here who can perhaps give me some support and not counting chickens or votes before they're hatched.